Hey guys, tonight we drift through golden mist and buzzing silence deep into the mountains of ancient Crete. The air smells like sweet sap and damp stone, and somewhere behind a curtain of ivy lies a cave dark echoing and weirdly sticky. Inside this cave, a baby god is crying. Not loudly, more like that snuffly, hiccuping whimper that says, "Please don't let my immortal father find me and swallow me whole." Classic baby stuff. This baby, by the way, is Zeus, future thunder hurler, current grumpy bundle in a swaddle. And you're not just watching. You're here tucked into the folds of myth, like a quiet observer peeking at the first days of Olympus's most dramatic figure. You're not going to survive this timeline, of course. Mortals rarely do. But you'll enjoy the tour. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And don't forget to drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when we fall asleep together. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Zeus isn't alone in this sticky, echoing cradle of destiny. His protectors, the curetes, loud clashing dancers with armor and stomping boots, make a racket outside to cover his cries. But inside the cave, it's bees who keep him alive. Bees and a divine goat named Amalthea. Honestly, Greek mythology never worried too much about consistency in species caregiving. Amalthea bleats, softly nuzzling the infant, and from the cracks in the cave's walls emerge the Melissae bee nymphs. Their wings shimmer like glass, their fingers smell faintly of clover, and they carry with them golden nectar dripping from carved wooden bowls. One nymph hums to keep the infant calm, another gently wipes honey onto his lips. You wouldn't think an entire pantheon could hinge on one baby getting a sugar rush, but here we are. The Melissae are weirdly important, even though most modern retellings forget them. In the oldest layers of Greek lore, they're tied to the earth goddess Rhea, to the underworld, and to prophecy itself. Honey in these early stories isn't just sweet, it's divine sacred, able to preserve bodies, embalm memory, and maybe even see into the future. People today use honey to treat sore throats. The ancients used it to hold the cosmos together. And Zeus, well, he eats it with impressive mess. His chubby god-baby cheeks are slick with gold. His fingers grasp for more. He gurgles happily, which is a huge win considering his father is a time-eating chaos, being who recently swallowed most of Zeus's siblings. Historians still argue whether the Melissae were originally spirits of the dead goddesses in disguise, or just symbolic of nature's harmony. Whatever they were, they fed the most powerful figure in Greek myth, and they made sure he didn't cry too loudly. Meanwhile, outside, the curettes are performing interpretive battle dance. Imagine five guys with bronze shields yelling "Yah" while doing lunges in a thunderstorm. It's not subtle, but it does keep Cronus distracted. He thinks the clashing and stomping is just a regional rave, or maybe a cult initiation. Either way, he doesn't investigate, which is great news because if he finds this cave, Zeus is toast, or rather snack. Inside, though, the mood is soft and syrupy. The cave's ceiling glows faintly from phosphorescent lichen. Bees zip back and forth between their hive and the bowls carried by the Melissae. There's a soft humming, low rhythmic, the kind of sound that slips right behind your eyes and makes your shoulders drop. If you listen closely, it almost sounds like a lullaby, like the mountain itself is singing. It's not all peaceful, though. At one point, baby Zeus gets hold of a whole honeycomb and bites it like a sandwich. He yelps. The Melissy flutter around concerned, but eventually chalk it up to a lesson learned. Even baby gods must respect the bee. In this quiet cave, you watch time pass like dripping nectar. Bees teach him more than feeding, they teach him order, rhythm, and sting. They model a society built not on violence, but vibration. You'll see later how this matters when he's throwing lightning at relatives. But for now, he's a sticky, burping toddler with bee nannies and a goat. One nymph starts whispering old prophecies as she rocks him words about storms, about kings, about thunder rolling over the sea. Another nymph rolls her eyes and mutters something about too dramatic. The bees at least don't gossip. They just hum and work. Later in life, Zeus will tell people he overthrew Cronus by pure strength and cunning. But between you and me, none of that happens without a cave full of buzz bloom and dripping sweetness. You hear it now, the soft vibration of thousands of wings. You smell pollen and warm earth. And even if you don't quite believe that Zeus was raised by bees, part of you wants to. Because something about it feels right. Sticky, strange, and exactly what a myth should be. You wake into the scene again, nestled in the honey-glow shadows of the cave. But time has passed. Zeus has grown not much, but enough to sit up, babble a bit, and smack things with a little wooden club. You know, standard baby demigod development. His curls are sticky with honey. His laugh echoes off the stone like a thunder crack you could cuddle. One of the Melissy lets him gum her finger, beaming like a proud aunt. The goat Amalthea still hovers nearby. She's missing a horn now, long story involving baby teeth and a moment of overenthusiasm, but the nymphs turned it into the cornucopia, the legendary horn of plenty, overflowing with food, flowers, and, for some reason, grapes that never run out. You see, myth logic doesn't worry about sourcing. Everything's metaphor until it isn't. Outdoors, the Kurets continue their warrior-dancer routine, though lately it's turned into something between martial art and rave performance art. Occasionally, one of them tries a spin move and falls over. They all pretend it's part of the ritual. You'd laugh, but it would echo in here, and you're trying to stay quiet. Inside the cave, though, there's a shift, something subtle. The Melissai are preparing for a ritual. You're not told exactly what it is, but it involves honeycombs placed in a spiral carved stones set into the floor, and something whispered in a language older than Olympus. They hum as they work. Not a tune, just tone. Vibrational. If sound were syrup, this would be it. Zeus watches wide-eyed. His club forgotten, his fingers sticky, he leans toward the arrangement. One of the nymphs nods to another. They're testing something, his memory perhaps, or his resonance. Maybe both. You edge closer. The honey spiral starts to glow just faintly, and from the edges of the cave, bees begin to gather in concentric circles. They're not flying randomly anymore. They're moving with intent, like they've rehearsed this choreography for millennia. Now pause, because this is where things get weird even by Greek standards. Some fringe scholars, and they're fringe because the mainstream ones usually laugh them off, believe that this ritual, this spiral of bees and humming nymphs, is the moment Zeus received more than a bottle, that maybe this is when the gods started to encode memory into sound. Historians still argue whether ancient Greek rituals had coded musical elements tied to divine memory. Some point to the Orphic hymns and say sure, others roll their eyes and mutter about wishful thinking and flower crowns. But here right now in this shimmering, humming circle of bees, you feel something that can't be dismissed. Zeus's eyes flicker, his lips twitch. The hum vibrates in your sternum, gentle and constant, like lying on a warm drum. He blinks slowly, and for a moment, just a breath, he looks older than he should. Not in a creepy horror movie way, more like a tired professor waking up too early from a nap. Then the light fades, the bees return to their business. The spiral breaks apart. One nymph sighs and says, "Well, that didn't explode. Progress." Another laughs and hands Zeus a fig. He promptly squishes it on his forehead. Back to normal then. Outside thunder rolls not from Zeus, not yet, but from the mountains beyond. It rattles the stones. The nymphs freeze just for a moment. Then routine resumes. One collects dripping wax. Another feeds the goat. Life divine and otherwise continues. You stay tucked near the edge of the scene, half dreaming, half curious. You can't help but wonder, was that just a baby reacting to noise? Or something more, a flicker of divine memory passed down through bee song and sweet vibration. Later myths will forget this moment entirely. They'll tell you Zeus was raised in secret, yes, but skip the bees, the spirals, the fig to the forehead. But here's your secret, you saw it. You were here, among the hum, in the warmth, watching a god remember something. A fringed tidbit you pick up from one of the Melissae as she leans against a honeycomb wall, the bees who raised Zeus. They don't die. Ever. Not these ones. They exist in a cycle of wax and memory, not immortal like gods, but not mortal either. Just looping. And when you ask how that works, she shrugs and says, myth biology is tricky. It's been a long day for baby Zeus. He starts to fuss. One of the nymphs picks him up and bounces him gently, while another sings a lullaby that somehow references both meadows and war crimes. Greek lullabies don't mess around. The cave dims as night approaches outside. The curetas' stomping grows slower. Even they get tired. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hoots. Probably metaphorically, maybe not. Zeus curls up beside Amalthea. The goat wraps her body protectively around him. A bee lands gently on his nose and rests there. You lie back, letting the hum of the cave wash over you. Sweet air, sticky silence, the quiet weight of myth pressing against your chest like a warm blanket. Outside, the world spins forward oblivious, but in here and here, time holds its breath. You wake to buzzing, not the usual casual garden buzz, but something coordinated. It pulses through the cave in waves like a drum line made entirely of wings. The light has changed too. Morning has broken, but the sun outside doesn't reach all the way in, so everything is backlit with amber and gold. Zeus is sitting up now, entirely alert, and babbling to a small rock like it's a council member of Mount Olympus. His hair's grown a bit wild, curls crowned with bee wings stuck from the honey. He looks like a toddler ready to wage war with a spoon. You stretch. Or rather, your dream self, does your physical body is still under the blankets, somewhere in the waking world half drooling onto a pillow. But here you're in full mythic mode, and there's something brewing just beyond the cave. The Melissae are preparing again, only this time it's not soft humming or stone spirals. They're weaving, yes, weaving honeybees together into living symbols, symbols of power. You're not sure how that works exactly, But you're also not about to argue with someone who can tie together insects without using thread. One of them glances your way, then back to her work. You're not really part of this. You're just observing, a sleepwalker in a divine daycare. Zeus stands up, tiny legs trembling with the ambition of Olympus. He points outside and says something you don't understand, probably cloud or Kaninen, or maybe conquer. Either way, the Melissae take it as a sign. The time has come for a little excursion. You follow them outside. For the first time, you see the landscape surrounding Mount Ida, steep crags and olive trees, ancient stones covered in moss, and then bees everywhere, bees. Not chaotic swarms, but structured, trailing like glowing threads toward a single point on the mountain. And then through the trees, a clearing, a natural amphitheater made of stone and dirt. The Melissae guide Zeus there, placing him gently in the center, like the world's most ambitious toddler at a drum circle. Around him the curates begin again, stomping, clashing, hollering in rhythm, shaking the ground like living metronomes. Here's the mainstream history moment for your brain to chew on. While your body melts into sleep, in some versions of the myth, the curates weren't just noisy babysitters. They were ancient warrior priests, protectors of divine rituals, and possibly the precursors to later Greek mystery cults. Their rhythm wasn't just for show, it was sacred, a heartbeat of secrecy, an anti-soundtrack to divine birth. But fringe versions go further, way further. Some whisper that the curates weren't human at all, but spirits born from the mountain itself, elemental beings who answered only to Gaia. Others say they were early manifestations of a cosmic balancing force, nature's white noise machine, if you will. There's even one speculative paper that insists they were timekeepers, marking the rhythm that regulated divine time and mortal time separately. Historians still argue whether these kinds of rituals were ever actually practiced or if they're just post-mythic window dressing. But here now, under the humming air and stomping feet, you're inclined to believe in the more dramatic versions. At least for tonight, Zeus doesn't seem scared. Quite the opposite, he laughs and throws his arms wide like he's conducting the whole spectacle. The bees respond. They swirl upward in a funnel, catching the light like flecks of living gold. Then in a moment of childlike showmanship, Zeus claps once. The bees explode outward, not violently, but theatrically, and then regroup in a perfect spiral above him. It's as if he's discovered the choreography inside instinct. The Melissae nod satisfied. They speak softly to each other. You catch phrases like the bloodline remembers and almost ready. Ready for what no one tells you. You just get to watch. A bit later, as the sun climbs higher, the group returns to the cave, Zeus yawning and trailing grape skins behind him. The bees break formation and go about their usual buzzing like nothing happened. Amalthea greets them at the entrance, her single horn wrapped in vines today, probably just because it's Tuesday. You settle back in your little corner of dream reality, wondering again, how much of this will survive the edits of future mythmakers? Probably not the bee choreography. Maybe not the stomping warrior spirit nannies. Almost certainly not the grape-sticky toddler commanding spirals of insects with a giggle. But here you are witnessing the moment a god first tries to influence the world around him, not with lightning, yet not with wrath or thunder, but with rhythm, with ritual, with bees. One of the Melissae offers you a honeyed fig. It's warm from the sun and soft as velvet. You bite into it and the sweetness melts over your tongue like a bedtime blessing. You lean back against the cave wall again, eyes half-lidded, watching the nymphs tidy up the curate's practice footwork and Zeus chase his own shadow. Somewhere, a distant buzz starts up again. Not the bees this time, just the gentle hum of the mountain holding its breath. Later that day or whatever passes for day in this myth-soaked time stream, you find yourself wandering through the grove below Mount Ida, where everything smells like sage sun-baked bark and something suspiciously like candied walnuts. Zeus is asleep again, sprawled in a bed of moss, with one sandal still on, and a bee tucked into his curls like a living hairpin. He looks peaceful, which probably means mischief is building somewhere nearby. You're following the Melissi now, though following is generous. They move like wind, and you sort of stumble along half aware, like someone drifting through an especially vivid screensaver. They carry baskets today, wicker, ancient, fragrant with resin, and inside are items you can't quite name. Not just herbs and roots, but fragments of something older, petrified feathers, tiny clay figurines, feathers dyed with ash and wine. They bring you to a small clearing ringed by cypress and laurel. In the middle, a shallow pool of water reflects the sky in slow ripples, and bees hover above it, never landing, just hovering. The surface is dotted with flower petals and something else, yes, grains of corn, maize, which makes precisely 0 sense until you remember time here doesn't work like time in your kitchen. It folds. And tonight that fold links Mount Ida to another sacred mountain thousands of miles away, and centuries into the future, the mountains of the Maya, where corn was more than food. It was the measure of everything: birth, growth, death, even divine time. The Melissi begin chanting. Their voices echo against the stones and into the shallow water, which begins to shimmer, not just reflect shimmer. And suddenly, you're not in Crete anymore. You're in a limestone cave in Mesoamerica. You can still smell the honey, still hear the buzz, but now the air is thicker, humid with jungle breath, and something drips rhythmically from a stalactite onto a painted altar. The gods have changed their masks, but the ritual continues. A figure priest, queen timekeeper, places a cob of corn beside a carved glyph. She lights something that smells like burning sap and chants a phrase that sounds oddly familiar, as if myth shares a dialect across oceans. And you realize this isn't a tangent. This is part of Zeus's becoming. Here's your mainstream historical nugget: in both ancient Greek and Maya cosmologies, divine figures undergo hidden childhoods. Moments where the world holds its breath, pretending nothing miraculous is happening, just to protect the forming god from being snatched too soon by fate or worse, family. The fringe angle: some esoteric scholars believe that mythic childhoods exist outside of linear geography, that the infant Zeus could in theory share developmental space with Hunhunapu, the maize god of the Maya, both being nurtured by feminine earth-tethered energies. Bees in one myth, bats in another. Milk and honey versus corn and blood. Different snacks, same dream. Historians still argue whether these overlaps are coincidence, archetypal convergence, or just modern minds playing mythic connect the dots. But as you kneel beside this glowing pool, watching corn float across stone water under an impossible moon, it doesn't feel like coincidence. The Melissi begin a slow circling dance around the pool. Their feet leave no marks in the dirt. You hear their voices speaking both Greek and something older, something not quite any language at all. The bees return not from the cave this time, but from the very air and begin to spiral upward, mimicking the movement of the corn kernels in the water. Clockwise, then counterclockwise, then upward in that eerie golden helix. You hear a sound like laughter, but not from any human mouth. It's the wind playing tricks, or time itself exhaling. You glance down and realize your hands are sticky again. Not from honey, but from maize sap, as if the place has decided to involve you now. You're no longer just watching. You're a placeholder, a mortal thread woven briefly into the cloth of divine upbringing. It's flattering and slightly alarming. The ritual ends with silence, that deep, sacred kind of silence that leaves your ears ringing because they don't know what to do without sound. One of the Melissae nods at you. Another beckons you back toward the cave. When you return, Zeus is gone. Just gone. You panic a little, though you're not sure why. It's not like you were babysitting, but still something inside you clenches until you hear the faintest buzz, not bees this time, but energy, and see a flicker of gold at the cave mouth. There he is, standing, not quite toddler anymore, more like child god in the making. His limbs look stretched by story, his eyes glowing with new knowledge. He's holding something, a maize cob wrapped in fig leaves. He looks at you like he's known you forever. Then he laughs, and just like that turns into a swarm of bees. Not metaphorically, literally. One moment he's Zeus. The next he's 50,000 bees flying in perfect synchronization, swirling around the cave like a sentient storm. You should panic. You don't, because somehow this feels right. This is a test or a step or both. The bees spiral upward, then shoot out through the cave roof into the sky, a comet of living light. The Melissae don't flinch. Amalthea sighs a tired goat mother noise and settles back down in her moss. You sit too. There's nowhere to go but here. You've just seen a god turn into insects and leave the building. The kind of thing that'll probably be trimmed in the later drafts of mythology, but you'll remember, because the moment lingers in your muscles, and you're still sticky with corn. You sit in the quiet aftermath, blinking slow and syrupy in the gloom of the cave. The bees are gone, Zeus is gone, and yet the space hums with something residual, like the warmth a person leaves behind after standing too close for too long. The Melissae begin to clean up the ritual in a way that feels suspiciously like tidying after a toddler's birthday party, half reverent, half resigned. One of them plucks a petal from the pool, tucks it behind her ear, and gives you a look that says in no uncertain terms, this is not the last time he'll pull something like that. You stand knees creaking and step gingerly toward the edge of the cave mouth, where the daylight isn't quite behaving anymore. It's shimmering, wobbling like heat on asphalt. You suspect that you are not currently anchored to any particular century, which is fine. You weren't using this decade anyway. Outside, the landscape has shifted again. Gone are the olive trees and limestone cliffs of Crete. In their place rise jagged black rocks covered in what might be moss or might be some kind of fungus with a college degree. The sky is redder than it has any right to be, and far on the horizon lightning cracks, but the thunder arrives backwards, rolling before the flash. You've landed in one of those mythic borderlands, a liminal space where time naps and stories tangle their roots. And there, shimmering into view like a slow-loading .gif, is the swarm. The Zeus bees have returned. Not in attack mode, though. Let's be real, if they did attack, you wouldn't stand a chance. But in ballet mode. They're swirling in complex formations, looping and twisting with a precision that would make a NASA engineer weep. They seem to be writing something into the air. And as you squint, you realize they are. Letters, glyphs, not Greek, not Maya. Something older. Something angular and carved from instinct. A language meant to be danced, not spoken. You don't understand it, but you feel it. This is Zeus telling the world, I am becoming, not with words, with motion. The Melissae join the formation, stepping into the pattern like it's a song they've danced 1,000 times. You're struck again by how ancient everything feels. Not dusty ancient, elemental ancient, like the smell of wet clay or the sound of firewood cracking. And then, because myth has a cruel sense of pacing, it happens. A second swarm appears. These bees are not gold, they are black, shimmering oily with wings that make a higher, angrier hum. They come from the east, from a jagged tear in the horizon where nothing should be, and they move like soldiers. The Melissae freeze. You freeze. The gold bees hover, uncertain. Then they swirl tighter, forming a glowing cocoon. The black bees form a wall. For a moment, it's quiet, and then they clash. Now here's your historical anchor before this spirals completely into dream battle territory. In many ancient cultures, bees were seen not just as pollinators, but as warriors of divine will. In Egyptian temples, bees represented the king's voice. In Greek tradition, priestesses who served goddesses like Demeter or Artemis were called bees Melissae. In conflict, bees weren't merely bugs. They were avatars of order, chaos, fertility, death. Winged paradoxes. The fringe theory. Some neo-pagan circles believed the gods once were swarms. That divine form might not mean statuesque humans with six-packs, but instead collective intelligences, flocks, storms, murmurs. The myth of Zeus's bees isn't a quirky side note. It's the main story we forgot to remember. Historians still argue whether references to bee gods are symbolic psychedelic hallucinations or scraps of an older belief system smuggled into later mythology like contraband knowledge. Meanwhile, back in your current nightmare ballet, the swarm war rages. You can't look away. It's beautiful, terrifying, like watching two orchestras duel with sound. The air shimmers with wing beats. Sparks crackle where gold touches black. Petals and feathers and fragments of fig leaf swirl through the crosswinds. And then he returns. Zeus. Not the swarm, not the baby, the boy. He steps from the golden cocoon, no longer honey-smeared or sleep-tousled. He's taller now. Renin 12. Time has clearly taken another coffee break. His eyes blaze like lightning distilled. And when he speaks, it's not with words. The black swarm halts mid-strike. The Melissae freeze mid-dance. Even the clouds above seem to pause their slow crawl. You don't know what he said. You don't hear it. You feel it like pressure on your sternum, like someone pressing the mute button on existence. The black bees shiver, then disperse, not in defeat, in understanding, like a threat-turned student. And just like that, the sky clears. Zeus turns to you and grins boyish again. For a moment you see the child inside the god, the prankster who will someday transform into a swan to seduce a queen, or turn a thundercloud into a disguise, or rearrange the cosmos for fun. But for now he's just A kid who turned into bees and won a magical swarm duel. You know, normal developmental milestones. He walks past you barefoot in the dew and plucks a flower that only exists in myth. He tucks it behind his ear. Then he vanishes. Because of course he does. The Melissae offer no explanation. They gather the petals, sweep the dust, and begin humming again. Their tune is soothing, old, the kind of lullaby that predates language. You sit on a stone that wasn't there before and let your breath settle. You've just watched a god win a battle made entirely of bees, and somehow that was only Thursday. You linger on the stone longer than you probably should, but no one rushes you. The Melissae have returned to their quiet rituals, some gathering pollen from invisible blooms, others scribbling unknown symbols into the soft dirt with twigs dipped in honey. It's oddly domestic, like mythological housekeeping. You'd half expect one of them to ask you to fetch water or sweep out the corners of the cave, if not for the fact that the cave has no corners. It's round breathing like the inside of a womb, or perhaps more appropriately, a hive. You're not sure how long you sit there. Time, that lovely little illusion, has sloshed sideways again. But eventually the stone beneath you warms, not with sunlight, but with movement. You look down. The rock is humming, a gentle vibration like a phone on silent, wedged under a couch cushion. And then it splits. No drama, no shattering, just a clean line like it was designed to open. From the seam, mist curls out, soft and golden, smelling faintly of almond and, of course, beeswax. You peer into the crevice. A staircase descends. Naturally. You glance at the Melissae. They aren't watching, or maybe they're pretending not to watch. Either way, this feels like one of those you're being invited deeper into the myth moments. The kind where the narrator whispers, "Do it," and you sigh because you know you will. So you go. The steps are narrow and slightly sticky. Each one gives a little, like walking on sponge cake left in the sun. It's not unpleasant, just surprising. The walls are alive with carvings, more of those dancing glyphs winding in spirals and loops. Some glow faintly, some twitch as if irritated by your presence. You try not to breathe too loud. After what feels like a descent through the alphabet of dreams, you reach the bottom. And there it is, a room shaped like a hexagon. No surprise there. Honeycomb geometry. Everything about this place is an ode to bee-structured chaos, golden symmetry, ritual precision, layered over wild instinct. The air is thick with story. At the center of the chamber sits a low platform, and on it a mask. It's not ornate, not jeweled, just carved wood, smoothed by centuries of hands shaped into a stylized bee face. Large compound eyes, delicately etched antennae, tiny wing flares at the temples. You know exactly what's going to happen. You pick it up anyway. As soon as your fingers brush the wood, the room pulses, like a heartbeat, like the thump of wings. And then, you are not you. You are bees. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. Quite literally, you are now a swarm. 1,000 tiny selves moving in orchestration. Your senses fracture and expand. You can see ultraviolet. You can taste pheromones. You know where the queen is, not because someone told you, but because your body remembers. You rise from the chamber like mist, like smoke, like intention. Up through a shaft that wasn't there before. Out into the sky. This sky is different, brighter, bluer, but wrong somehow. As you hover, thousands of wings beating in concert, you realize you've moved forward. Through time. just a bit. Below you a palace, tall columns, a courtyard blooming with orange trees and peacocks. Women in chitons lounge in the sun. Men in tunics argue beside fountains. There's wine, there's drama, there's absolutely no Wi-Fi. Ancient Athens. And in the center of the courtyard, beneath an olive tree, older than most gods, sits a boy. Curly hair, sharp eyes, a nose that's already too judgmental for his age. This is Plato. Baby Plato. Okay, maybe tween Plato. 11, maybe 12. He's bored. He's reading some proto-philosophical scroll while ignoring a tutor who's desperately trying to explain geometry using goat entrails and fruit. You still a swarm drift lower. You're drawn to him. Why, who knows? Maybe it's fate. Maybe it's mythic inertia. Maybe because once Zeus became bees and some part of him remained in the hive, passed down not by blood, but by pollen. You settle on the olive tree, buzzing gently. Plato glances up. For a moment he sees you, not as insects, but as meaning. A twitch of a smile, a scribble in the margin of his scroll. Later he'll write of ideal forms, of perfect truth hidden behind imperfect copies. And maybe, just maybe, that idea came from a bee that buzzed too close, carrying the hum of gods in its wings. Mainstream historical fact time. In the ancient world, bees were often associated with prophecy and divine inspiration. The Oracle of Delphi, some say, was trained by bee priestesses. Plato himself referred to the soul as a bee returning to the hive. Coincidence, or the gentle paw print of mythology on the shoulder of logic? Fringe theory alert. There's a somewhat niche belief among esoteric historians that philosophical genius is seeded, not taught, that it arrives like pollen on a breeze, that minds like Plato's bloom not from rigorous study, but from one moment of contact with the divine swarm. Historians still argue whether Plato's metaphors of harmony, form, and order stem from his rational mind or from a dream he once had where he became part of a hive. Back in the present, well, your present, which is technically ancient Greece but in a myth space, so all timelines apply, you're starting to feel your human edges again. The swarm sensation begins to fade. Your body reassembles. Knees, elbows, questionable vertebrae. You land softly in the courtyard behind a potted fig. No one notices. That's the rule here. Myths never stare directly at travelers. You look at Plato one last time. He's writing furiously now. Maybe he'll remember the bees. Maybe he won't. But that hum in his thoughts, that need to find the structure beneath chaos, you gave him that. Not bad for a Wednesday. You don't even try to figure out how to get back. One blink and the fig tree behind you is gone, replaced by shadows and flickering torchlight. You're standing, no gliding, through a long corridor lined with columns that shimmer like they've been dipped in honey. The air smells of time and heat, and something sharp like resin and prophecy had a baby. You recognize this place not from experience, but from 10,000 overused museum placards and 3 too many high school essays. Delphi. You've landed at the navel of the ancient Greek world, the place where gods whispered through gas leaks and priestesses spoke in riddles that launched ships, sparked wars, and ruined perfectly good family dinners. Ahead of you, a stairwell coils downward into the belly of the temple. Your feet move without permission. A soft hum follows you like the memory of wings. You descend into the sacred chamber, the Adyton. It's quieter than you'd expect, no chants, no frenzied smoke. Just one girl seated cross-legged on a smooth stone slab, eyes half closed like she's pretending to nap through a lecture. She's the Pythia, or at least a Pythia, the oracle. But this one looks new, young, barely older than Plato from the last scene. Her fingers twitch like she's trying to hold on to a dream she hasn't dreamed yet. You sit opposite her. She opens one eye. Zeus, she says, like it's a greeting. Well, that's awkward. You glance behind you just to make sure you haven't accidentally worn your swarm of bees disguise again. But know your body is intact. Mostly. I was expecting lightning, she adds, brushing a curl behind her ear. Instead, I get you. You don't say anything. Mostly because, again, myth logic. You don't have a voice unless the narrative really demands one. Instead, you tilt your head asking the question silently. Why are you here? The girl squints thoughtfully. You're not the real Zeus, are you? You're a piece, a memory shard. Something he left behind when he was too busy turning into birds and pretending to be everyone's dad. She smiles not kindly. You're the bees. The words ring like a chime in the air. And suddenly you're vibrating again and not full swarm, just a hum in your spine. The Pythia inhales sharply and her eyes roll back, not in an exorcist way, more like she's searching for a name in the sky. You're here because the world is cracking again, she murmurs. The old myths are dissolving. The new ones are half-baked. TikTok priests, algorithmic omens, BuzzFeed prophecies, none of it sticks. You raise an eyebrow, she continues. They need the old pollen, not the thunderbolts, the hive. Order disguised as chaos. That's one way to describe your current job. Her breath catches. She's gone full trance mode now. Her voice is deeper, older, like an entire amphitheater is using her throat as a megaphone. In the beginning, there was the bee. Before lightning, before law, before sky father and sea father and wine father, there was the hum, the pulse, the hex. She tilts her head as if listening to invisible wings, then whispers, "The bees remember what men forget." Mainstream historical fact incoming. The oracle at Delphi did indeed serve as a major religious center in ancient Greece believed to be the mouthpiece of Apollo. But older myths, way older, hint that Delphi was once ruled by Gaia, the earth goddess, and before her by the bee-like three nymphs. The sacred cave, the omphalos, stone, the trance states all predate Olympian takeover. Quirky fringe theory. Some argue that the buzzing heard by the Pythia wasn't just from natural gases, but from a hive resonance, an actual frequency of ancient bee colonies hidden beneath the temple floor, stimulating altered states of consciousness. Basically spiritual ASMR. Ancient Greece edition. Historians still argue whether the rise of Apollo at Delphi was a hostile religious merger or a gradual myth layering over a much, much older Earth-based practice. The Pythia's voice softens. Go deeper, she says. Follow the nectar spiral. Not all gods come down from the sky. Some rise from roots. Then she slumps, breathing like she just ran a marathon in sandals. You reach out to steady her, but your hand passes through. You're fading again, drawn downward, this time toward root soil, warm darkness. Another shift. Now you're in a forest, thick, ancient, the kind of woods that don't get mapped even in fantasy novels. There's a low humming everywhere, like someone buried a speaker system under every mossy rock and tuned it to existential comfort. The trees part, and there it is. An altar of stone shaped like an enormous hexagon, and atop it a statue, not of Zeus, not of Apollo, of a woman, carved from blackened wood half-wreathed in golden wire. Her eyes are closed, her belly is round. Her arms are open like she's about to catch a falling child, or maybe a planet. You don't know her name. She doesn't need one. But etched beneath her feet are symbols you vaguely recognize from earlier. One resembles a stylized bee, another a spiral, another a seed. The hum grows louder. You kneel instinctively, not out of worship, but out of understanding. This is where it began. The bee goddess, mother of hexes, matron of pollen, the one even Zeus couldn't outshine, so he did what he always does. He stole her story, broke it into parts, and wore one of them like a disguise. You think again of that swarm you became. Maybe it wasn't Zeus pretending to be bees. Maybe it was the other way around. The hum surrounds you now, not like sound, but like temperature, like standing beside a hive in midsummer. Warm with potential, thick with invisible logic. You don't know how long you kneel before the statue. Time has gone soft again, but the moment shifts as they always do. Something nudges at the back of your thoughts, more of a vibration than a voice, a kind of suggestion that it's time to move on. So you rise. The forest responds. The ground beneath your feet feels intelligent, not in a creepy the trees are watching kind of way, but more like it remembers every step taken across it. Like your footsteps are part of a much older equation being solved beneath your soles. And then you notice the circles, stone rings half buried in the moss, arranged not randomly, but rhythmically, concentric, spiraling inward and outward, as if someone dropped a boulder into the fabric of myth. And these are the ripples. At the center stands another figure, not a statue this time, but a woman, real or myth real anyway. Her cloak is made of golden bee wings stitched together by dew. Her hair is the color of fermented honey. She doesn't speak but lifts a finger and draws a shape in the air, a spiral that turns in on itself and then bursts outward. You recognize it. It's the same pattern carved onto the omphalos at Delphi, the same spiral from Malea, from Crete, from pottery shards and cave ceilings and temple floors all over the ancient world. A shape older than language, a shape that buzzes. She walks and you follow. The stone path coils downward, always downward, beneath the forest, beneath the myth, into the soil of time. Not metaphorically, literally. You're inside the earth now. The path glows faintly with bioluminescent lichen. A root brushes your cheek like a curious finger. Somewhere nearby, water drips in slow motion. You pass through caverns etched with dancing bees, with women holding staffs wrapped in ivy, with thrones flanked not by lions but by honeycombs. The air tastes metallic and sweet. Mainstream history time across the Aegean and Mediterranean bee imagery dominates the oldest religious and cultural artifacts long before the Olympians took center stage. Minoan priestesses wore bee-shaped jewelry. The name Melissa literally means honey bee and was often a title for priestesses. Even the Eleusinian mysteries whispered of bees in their secret rites. Quirky detail incoming. In somorphic fragments, it's said that the soul escapes the body as a bee flying toward the afterlife through subterranean tunnels guarded by chthonic bee goddesses. Makes reincarnation feel more pollinated, doesn't it? Historians still argue whether the persistence of bee symbolism across early Mediterranean cults signals a unified mother bee archetype or just a universally relatable metaphor for sweetness industry and getting way too into hexagons. Back to the spiral path. You emerge into a chamber shaped like a massive hive, not made of wax, stone, bone, and glimmering mineral. In the center, a pool. Not water, though. Something darker, thicker. Memory, maybe. The woman turns to you again. Zeus remembered this place, she says, voice like wind through reeds, but only barely. He came once long ago before he had a name. He saw the hive, drank from the pool, and in his fear of being less, he made himself more. You edge closer to the pool. It ripples at your approach, though nothing touches it. Your reflection forms, but it shifts not just your face, but the you through different skins. You as the swan, you as the bull, you as the golden shower still awkward, and you as the swarm. So many forms, so many stories, layered like wax combs in the hive of mythology. And beneath them all this one, a god not born of sky or thunder, but summoned by pollen and ritual and ancient sweetness. You were always part of the hive, the woman murmurs. Even when you forgot. You kneel at the pool and dip your fingers in. It's warm, it tingles, like carbonated nostalgia. You close your eyes, and suddenly you remember. Not just myths, not just battles and births and badly aged temple frescoes. You remember being the hum inside the first fig, the tremble in the hands of the first priestess, the shape of time before clocks and sundials. You remember the original spiral. And now with that memory coiled inside you, you understand why the swarm matters. Zeus didn't become a swarm of bees to seduce, to hide, or even to escape. He did it to return, to rejoin the source. You open your eyes. The woman is gone. The pool is still. And far above, through cracks in the cavern ceiling, a shaft of golden light pierces the darkness like a forgotten promise. You rise again. Something has changed. You no longer feel like a visitor in myth. You feel like part of the architecture. The hum follows you steadier now. It's in your bones, in the walls, in the stories waiting just ahead. You step away from the pool and something in the hive chamber shifts behind you like a breath taken in reverse. But you don't turn around. You don't need to. Some part of you already understands what you took from that dark humming. Basin wasn't water, wasn't honey, wasn't even memory. It was permission. Permission to see, to remember, to connect the mythic pollen dots across a sky charted not in stars but in symbolism. Your path winds up again, corkscrewing toward the surface in a way that feels symbolic. Of course it does everything. Down here is a metaphor that somehow also happens to be real. As you climb, the rock around you begins to pulse with faint carvings, zigzags, spirals, hexagons, bees, mid-flight, gods, mid-metamorphosis. The deeper language of myth, not written, but etched into the nervous system of the earth. And there, like a footnote in stone, one panel stops you, a bee unmistakably, but with the head of a lion and wings of an eagle. It's not just weird, it's deliberate. Quirky side note scholars unearthed hybrid bee animal carvings in certain pre-Hellenic caves across Crete and southern Anatolia, suggesting early cults didn't just like bees, they viewed them as cosmic transformers halfway between insect deity and symbol. You're looking at one now and it's smiling or snarling, maybe both. You reach the surface and sunlight hurts. It slices across your eyelids like a scolding, as if the surface world with all its angles and deadlines and checkout receipts resents your time spent below. You blink. You're not in the same forest anymore. This is a grove, of olives, The trees are bent with age and authority. Their trunks look like they've witnessed more drama than a Greek chorus. And there hanging from one is a mask, bee-faced, wooden, cracked. You put it on. You shouldn't, obviously. You know this. But you're deep into section 9 of a bedtime myth binge, so rational decisions left the building ages ago. And the mask fits. Not like a costume, like a password. Suddenly you're watching from elsewhere. You're inside Zeus, which is unsettling but also oddly cozy. He's currently pacing across a mountain path in Crete, muttering to himself and clearly trying to shake off a hangover of metaphysical proportions. He stops, sniffs the air, looks up. The sky, which is clear suddenly, buzzes. He doesn't flinch, because this isn't the first time. And you now partially him remember the first time, a sacred cave centuries earlier. No thunderbolts, no Olympian ego, just a newborn god cradled in bees. Real fact time. The myth of Zeus being nursed by Amalthea, a goat, is the widely known version, but an older thread whispered through Orphic texts and echoed by the dactyls of Mount Ida claims that bees, yes, literal bees, fed baby Zeus honey in his mountain cradle, teaching him divine order through the structure of their hive. Historians still argue whether this suggests a lost pre-Olympian matriarchal religion or if the bee simply snuck into myth the way it does into picnic baskets quietly and without asking. Back in the memory, Zeus breathes in the hum and transforms, not fully into bees this time, but into something more slippery, into suggestion, into pollen, caught on wind, into that strange warmth behind your ear when you fall asleep beside a window. You're no longer watching. You're back in your own limbs, still wearing the mask, still standing in the olive grove. Only now others have gathered, priestesses or followers or versions of you. They wear cloaks embroidered with hexagons. They carry torches and jars of honey and curved knives that look more ceremonial than threatening, but also please don't test it. They begin a chant. It's in no language you know, but your bones remember, and your heartbeat starts matching their rhythm. You sway. A bee lands on your finger, stares at you like it's judging your entire internet search history, and then flies away. You remove the mask. The women vanish, like fog, or a memory you weren't supposed to keep. But the olive trees remain, and tucked into one knot in the bark, a scrap of papyrus old and almost teasingly fragile. You unroll it. It's a riddle, born of sky but taught by root. What feeds gods yet buries kings? I am six but never straight. No idea what it means, but it feels like a key, or a breadcrumb, or a compass pointing you towards something more. Because yes, you've met Zeus. You've glimpsed his sacred swarm and sipped memory honey from a mythic cave pool. But this feels like the part the Olympians never put in the brochures. There's more, always more. And the hum your old friend now seems to agree. It grows louder again, not externally but inside you, like your blood is tuning to a different station. You start walking. There's no path, but your feet know where to go. And behind you, faint and fizzy in the air, a whisper, swarm again. You keep walking. Not because you know where you're going, honestly. You're 0 for 3 on that front tonight, but because your legs carry a memory your mind hasn't quite caught up to. A muscle-deep hunch that something important lies ahead, just past the horizon or the hedgerow, or that oddly suspicious patch of fog shaped like a reclining goat. The olive grove gives way to rocky hills, the kind you picture when someone says dry Mediterranean terrain, and you nod like you've hiked it. There's thyme underfoot and juniper in the air, and somewhere off to your left, a lizard scolds you with a sneeze of a chirp before vanishing into a crack in the rock. You crest a rise. Below you, a meadow circular as if trimmed by divine compass. In its center, a standing stone. You sigh because of course there's a standing stone. These things love to pop up just when you're trying to wind down. You descend. The stone isn't tall, maybe shoulder height, but it's covered in carvings layered chaotic like graffiti by ancient hands with opinions, spirals overlaid with suns, bees curled like commas, and carved dead center a stylized human face, except the mouth has been replaced by a swarm. Literal bees' wings, unfurled mid-flight, as if the act of speech itself is a release of insects. You're about to step closer when you notice the woman sitting cross-legged in the grass. She's been there the whole time probably. You just didn't notice her. Or maybe she wasn't supposed to be noticed yet. Her hair is braided with threads of gold. Her dress looks like it was stitched out of sunbeams and sarcasm. And in her lap, a bowl of something dark and glossy. She doesn't look up. She just says, "Took you long enough." Classic. You sit beside her. She offers the bowl. It's honey, but unlike any you've tasted, thicker, warmer, faintly singing in the bowl as though it remembers music. You dip a finger, taste. It knocks you sideways. Not physically you're still sitting, but internally the ground tilts. You are seeing something now. Not here, not now. But then, ancient Crete maybe, maybe not. Could be Thera or Lemnos or some island that slipped off the map entirely. It doesn't matter. What matters is this a procession, a spiral of dancers all wearing bee masks moving in precise formations. 3 steps pivot, 5 steps kneel. The pattern echoes the dance of bees in a hive. It's not performance, it's invocation. Real fact alert. Minoan frescoes and gold signet rings from the Bronze Age depict women in ritual poses, often flanked by insects or holding honeycombs. Scholars still argue whether these depictions represent actual priestesses, divine symbols, or just the ancient equivalent of bee-themed Pinterest boards. Back in the vision, one dancer breaks the spiral. She removes her mask. It's the woman in the meadow. She looks straight at you and smiles. The vision ends like a door closing on a breeze. You're back. The woman beside you is now standing. She brushes pollen from her dress like it's glitter annoying but inevitable. "Come on," she says. "You've got one more place to visit." She doesn't wait for a response. She walks barefoot toward a path that wasn't there a moment ago. It leads down into a ravine shaded with laurel and fig trees. You follow because that's what we're doing now, following cryptic women through magical landscapes in pursuit of bee mysticism. At the bottom of the ravine, hidden like an afterthought, is a small shrine. Stone, simple, surrounded by humming. A real swarm this time. Not angry, just busy, focused, living their little hexagonal lives. Inside the shrine, a statue, not of a god, of a woman, full-figured, powerful arms outstretched, bees carved along her shoulders like epaulets, her mouth open in mid-chant. You don't recognize her, and yet you do. This is not Hera, not Demeter, not Artemis. This is someone older, forgotten by name but remembered in shape. Fringe tidbit for your sleepy little brain. Some archaeologists believe there once existed a bee goddess cult, across the Mediterranean, distinct from the Olympians. Hints of her appear in Anatolian artifacts, in Libyan cave markings, even in fragments of Orphic hymns. Her name is lost, but her presence remains stitched into the myths, the rituals, the dreams. The woman touches the statue's chest. It pulses, not glows, pulses, like a heartbeat, like it's waiting. And then you hear it, the chant, not from outside, from within you. Your lips are moving. The words mean nothing and everything. The shrine hums in harmony, and in that moment, you are not just yourself. You are every dancer in that spiral, every bee, every myth half remembered and retold over firelight. You are the story and the telling. The woman nods. Now you understand. You kinda do, but also absolutely not. Still, your body knows to bow. And when you rise again, she's gone. The statue has changed. It's now smiling. You step backward out of the shrine into the flickering light of dusk, and the bees part for you. You don't walk back to the meadow. It walks back to you. The meadow folds up behind you like a well-read book. The grass flattens the path, crumbles the stone, with the bee face recedes into your memory, where it will no doubt wait patiently until your next anxiety dream. You don't miss it, not yet. You're still buzzing. Quite literally, there's a warmth in your chest that hasn't faded. It's not caffeine or adrenaline. It's something older, a hum that resonates in your rib cage, as if your sternum was lightly vibrating to the key of ancient mystery. If you pressed your ear against your own chest right now, it might sound like a hive at dusk. You glance up. There's a cave ahead. Of course there is. Because when you're chasing stories about Zeus turning into bees, a cave is never optional. It's the VIP lounge of mythological events. Births, banishments, revelations, caves host them all. And this one looks like it's been waiting specifically for you. The entrance isn't dramatic. No gaping chasm or thundering echoes. It's shy, tucked under a rock overhang, half covered by vines and fig roots. But the air around it feels cooler, like it's inhaling. You step inside. It's dark, but not suffocating. The walls are limestone, streaked with minerals, slick with age. Water drips somewhere in the distance, an intermittent metronome keeping time for a story long in progress. You keep walking. No torch, no flashlight, just the faint glow that comes from dreams and good storytelling. The cave widens, a chamber, and in it a mural. Faded, yes, but still legible, like a whisper preserved in stone. You see bees again, swirling in spirals leading toward a figure in the center. A man this time, tall, bearded, unmistakable. It's Zeus. But this isn't the usual lightning-wielding, thunder-slinging Zeus of Olympus. No eagle perched on his wrist. No throne, no scepter. This Zeus is dissolving, literally breaking apart into bees. You move closer. The bees emerge from his rib cage, from his eyes, from his palms. They're not attacking. They're leaving, like a soul fragmenting into 10,000 wings. And just below this scene, etched in a clumsy scrawl of linear B, is the phrase scholars translate as, "He remembered his other shape." Historical fact. While there's no canonical myth of Zeus turning into bees, ancient Greek literature does describe gods changing form. Zeus most notoriously so. He becomes a swan, a bull, a shower of gold, even fire. So, why not bees? Fringe variants from Crete suggest his early worship was bound to the earth, to the underworld, and to animal symbols, possibly even insects. Historians still argue whether the Minoan version of Zeus called Velkanos was originally a chthonic figure, earthbound, temporarily mortal, bound to death and rebirth rather than seated atop the clouds with thunderbolts and parental issues. In that light, the mural starts to make sense. This isn't Zeus the Conqueror. This is Zeus the Chrysalis, unmaking himself to become something else. You stare. Something tugs at the edge of your thoughts. Not fear, not even awe. Something gentler, like recognition. You're not just watching. You've seen this before. Not in another cave or another book, but in yourself. In every moment you've changed shape to survive. Every time you've melted into something new to escape a predator or a job interview or your own expectations. Every time you've disappeared into the hive just to see what the world looked like from there. And now, Watulir Sekamoniu, you're watching a god do the same. You're not entirely sure if that's flattering or terrifying. Possibly both. You take a seat. The stone is cold, but you don't mind. The mural looms ahead, timeless and unfinished. You hear the buzzing again, soft at first, then layered, like voices in a crowded cafe, all speaking at once, none distinct but all meaningful. Then a hand touches your shoulder. You don't flinch. You know it's her again, the woman from the meadow, or maybe a different version of her. This one's wearing cave dust like it's couture. Her braids are gone, replaced by a crown of honeycomb. Her eyes glimmer like candlelight reflected off amber. You're almost there, she says. You don't ask where there is. By now you know the rules. Keep your hands inside the narrative. Don't question the map until you reach the final fold. She kneels beside you. Together you look at the bees. Transformation, she murmurs, is messy, but it's honest. You nod. Mostly because you don't have anything clever to say back, but also because somehow you agree. She pulls something from her belt. It's a key, old, ornate, B-shaped handle, the kind of object that screams, "Place me dramatically into a stone door at the climax." She presses it into your palm. "Next door's yours to open," she says. "Don't forget to listen." Then she leans forward and kisses your forehead and vanishes. Because of course she does. You're alone again. But the cave no longer feels empty. It feels primed. You rise, and the mural begins to glow. The glow from the mural intensifies, not a blinding spotlight, but a slow candle flicker warming the cave walls, as if the limestone itself has started to remember the firelight of ancient rituals. You step back, watching the outlines shimmer and breathe. The bees in the stone begin to move. No, really. They crawl, not in a way that should send you scrambling toward the exit, but in a way that feels rehearsed, like dancers hitting their marks after centuries off stage. They spiral again, not outward, but inward this time, drawing your gaze to a circle you hadn't noticed before. A hidden door set seamlessly in the rock. Its seam glows faintly, just enough. You still hold the key. You don't need instructions. You never do in dreams or in myths. You step forward and press the bee-handled key into the notch at the center of the spiral. It clicks. No twist, no force needed, just intention. The wall exhales. Stone recedes. And beyond it, a stairway. Downward naturally. Because every ancient story worth telling takes you deeper before it lets you climb back up. You descend slowly. The steps are damp, worn smooth by time or worship or both. Every few meters there's a glyph carved into the wall. Bees again. Corn stalks. Human faces with sunbursts around their heads. A language older than alphabets. As you go, your ears adjust to the sound, not silence, but a pulse. A droning hum, steady and low, like a heartbeat heard through layers of honey. Then suddenly you step into open space. It's a cavern, larger than seems architecturally possible, larger than physics would recommend. It's circular, perfectly so, and at its center a tree. Not a metaphorical tree, a real one. Gnarled, white-barked, leafless yet alive. Its roots vanish into the ground, its branches stretch high into darkness, and around it suspended, circling, glowing are bees. But they're not just bees. They're made of light, golden filaments. They move slowly, hypnotically, a swarm shaped like thought. You walk closer, not cautiously, curiously. The hum thickens, fills your skull, your chest, your fingertips. You sense rather than hear something trying to speak, not in words, in rhythm, a pattern, like Morse code but older, woven into the movement of the bees. Then the tree speaks. Okay, not in the traditional mouth and vocal cords sense, but the bark shifts, cracks open slightly. Sap seeps out, not sticky, but luminous, like liquid sunrise. You step closer and place your hand against the trunk. Your vision stutters. You're no longer in the cavern. You're standing on a field of white sand surrounded by columns. A temple rises behind you, Minoan architecture unmistakable. Frescoes line the walls, women in flounced skirts holding bees in their palms, men with strange crowns, corn everywhere. You blink. A priestess stands before you, golden robes, a bee tattoo on her forehead. She speaks and you understand her not because you know the language, but because something inside you does. You have entered the sanctuary of Melissa, the bee women, the keepers of renewal. A historical fact in both Minoan and Mycenaean cultures, Melissae were sacred women priestesses associated with bees, fertility, and underworld rites. Their presence spans from Delphi to Crete, often in roles of divine intermediaries. You've heard the story wrong, the priestess continues. Zeus didn't become a swarm of bees. He was held by them, protected, reassembled. Every god must be broken before they become divine. A fringe tidbit. One obscure myth from Knossos claims that when infant Zeus was hidden from Kronos, it wasn't just goats who nursed him, but bees who sealed his wounds, guided his dreams, and whispered the first syllables of language into his ears. Historians still argue whether the Melissae were actual women or symbolic figures, but we remember, you try to speak but your mouth doesn't work here. She steps forward. The bees are memories, she says, and you're becoming one. The vision collapses. You're back in the cavern, hands still on the tree, eyes wide. The bees pulse around you, and for a brief, brilliant moment you understand their song. It's not in English or Greek or linear B. It's in pattern, vibration, a loop of beginnings and endings stitched into one endless moment. And you see things. A cave in Crete where a god was hidden in silence. A temple in Delphi, its original oracle, a swarm of bees. A funeral procession where bees swarmed the bier, not in anger, but in witness. A jar of honey buried with a king, not for taste, but for resurrection. You see yourself, too, stumbling into this story, half dreaming, wholehearted, following the buzz. You lower your hand. The tree is still now, silent. The bees begin to disperse, vanishing one by one, until only the echo of their flight remains. And there behind the tree is another door. You know what to do. The second door is simple, no carvings, no glowing spirals, no key required. Just an opening where stone folds away like thick velvet curtains. You step through not because you're brave, but because you've already come this far. It's not courage anymore. It's inevitability. And inside light, warm and orange flickering from oil lamps set into sconces in the walls. A corridor curves gently ahead its floor, paved with tessellated tiles. Little bees again, locked wing to wing in an endless mosaic. The air smells faintly of cedar and crushed thyme. You walk slowly. The corridor leads to another chamber, smaller than the cavern, more intimate. It feels like a waiting room for something cosmic. At its center sits a woman. Well, a statue of a woman. Or maybe both. You're not sure if she's breathing or just sculpted so perfectly your brain fills in the gaps. Her hair is coiled like a hive. Her dress is etched with hexagons. In one hand she holds a cornstalk, in the other a cluster of bees. And her eyes, those aren't stone. They watch you. You don't flinch. You're too far into this dream to be startled now. Another step forward. The floor hums beneath your feet, not from bees this time, but from something deeper. Something layered into the stone like a recording carved into vinyl. It thrums up your bones and out your spine. The statue speaks. Not aloud, not really, but in your head like a memory you didn't know you had. You've touched the tree. You've heard the swarm. You are ready for the dance. You tilt your head. Not the most restful bedtime metaphor, but okay. She continues, Zeus forgot. The world forgets, but we remember. There is a rhythm older than thunder, a mainstream historical fact. In ancient Greece, long before Zeus became the thunder-wielding patriarch, the early gods, chthonic, earthy maternal, were associated with insects' caves and food cycles. The bee was more than a symbol, it was a divine interface. The statue's hand extends. It doesn't physically move, but you feel something rise from the floor beneath you. A ripple. The hum grows louder. The air becomes honey thick. You blink. And suddenly you're not you anymore. You're a bee, tiny, winged, darting among 100 others in a golden sky. Don't panic. You don't have to steer. The swarm carries you, not like traffic, more like choreography. You loop around the statue's head, her crown now a vast garden. You land on her shoulder, tasting sunlight. The corn she holds vibrates with fertility, pulsing with stored memory. Then you're airborne again, spiraling downward into a tiny crack beneath the floor. And just like that, another world. It's dark, but in the way a theater goes dark before the show starts, there's anticipation in the air. You hover near a waxen wall. There are others here, be you, but also human, you folded and layered. Myth is funny like that. The queen appears not regal, not monstrous, just presence, ancient and soft. She speaks, and this time it is words. You've seen the joke, haven't you? That the god of lightning once had to become something as humble as a bee swarm just to be remembered. You nod, your antennae bouncing. A fringe tidbit. One Ptolemaic fragment claims that Zeus, after a disastrous love affair with a titaness, scattered his essence into a hive to escape detection by jealous gods, essentially ghosting the cosmos in bug form. She laughs, and it sounds like bells dipped in syrup. Historians still argue whether that was metaphor, she says. But myth doesn't care. It only wants to be useful. You blink and you're you again. Full-sized, upright, heart pounding in a slow, syrupy rhythm. The statue's gone. In her place, a doorway flickers open. You step through. You're in a circular amphitheater. Empty seats carved into stone, spiraling down toward a central pit filled with wildflowers. Bees hover lazily above them, unbothered by your presence. At the far end, a lectern, and on that lectern, a scroll. You cross the arena. Pick up the scroll, unroll it, and read. Thus the letters rearrange themselves, even as your eyes pass over them. It's not text meant to be understood in the usual way. It's mnemonic, musical, like reading sheet music written in pollen. The scroll tells you a story, not one you'll retell later at parties. It's the story of a swarm that once stole a god, scattered him into pieces, and stitched him back together in the womb of a cave. It's the story of a rhythm that predates Olympus, of women with honeycombs in their palms and thunderclouds in their mouths. It's also your story, apparently, which is surprising but not unpleasant. You return the scroll to the lectern. The flowers in the arena bloom, suddenly releasing a soft, sleep-inducing scent. Bees settle into the petals and everything slows. Even your thoughts, even your breath, even time. You stand at the edge of the amphitheater watching the flowers fold their petals like they're tucking themselves in for a nap. A few bees wobble gently in the air, then spiral downward, vanishing into crevices between the stones. Everything feels like it's winding down until you hear it. Music, not from an instrument, not exactly, more like the low thrumming rhythm of wings beating in harmony, layered with distant chimes like wind rustling through metal leaves. It's coming from somewhere ahead, and you follow because, of course, you do. The path narrows again, the walls lined with old frescoes, scenes of swarms spinning through clouds, gods with bee wings for eyebrows, temples carved like honeycombs. One image shows a massive bearded figure dissolving into thousands of golden insects, arms stretched in ecstasy or maybe defeat. Someone, possibly a sleepy monk, once scratched a note in the corner. He tasted time and forgot his name. That's comforting. A turn in the path reveals something new, a staircase. But instead of leading up or down, it spirals sideways as though someone uncoiled it like a cinnamon roll and stapled it to the wall. Gravity does what gravity wants here, apparently. You walk it anyway. Each step makes a soft thunk like tapping a ripe melon. The scent in the air changes: rosemary, then orange blossom, then smoke. You emerge into a chamber unlike anything you've seen tonight. It's circular, again. These ancients loved their geometry. But this one's different. The floor is made of concentric glass rings, each layer etched with Mayan glyphs, Greek letters, and hexagonal indentations. Light glows from below, pulsing with the tempo of a lazy heartbeat. On the walls, time, not metaphorical time, literal time. Sundials, hourglasses, water clocks, candle clocks, shadow clocks, dozens of devices, each calibrated to a different civilization's obsession with measuring the slow death of the day. A Babylonian clepsydra trickles beside a Chinese incense clock. An Egyptian merkit dangles from a chain like a forgotten locket. And in the center of it all, a throne, or maybe an armchair. Hard to tell. It's made of wood shaped like folded wings and dripping slowly with beeswax. The wax doesn't pool, it evaporates like time itself. And seated in the chair, as you guessed it, Zeus. But not lightning Zeus, not toga Zeus, no thunderbolts, no 12-pack abs. He's different, smaller, quieter, wearing a robe the color of storm clouds and slippers made of woven corn husks. His beard is wild, but in a retired philosophy professor way. A bee rests on his shoulder, another on his ear. He looks up as you enter, smiles. About time, he says, and gestures for you to sit in the throne opposite him. You do, and immediately you feel older. Not in a bad way, just aged, like a tree or a good cheese. You've probably got questions, he says, his voice like the rustle of a parchment map. Most people do, but don't worry, answers are mostly decorative. A mainstream historical fact, Zeus, as the Greeks inherited him, was never a fixed figure. In some rural cults, especially in Crete, he was worshipped not as a god of war or weather, but as a dying and reborn vegetation deity, more akin to Demeter or Dionysus. And yes, bees featured prominently in those rites. He leans forward. So here's the joke. You ready? You nod. I turned into bees, he says, to hide. You wait. That's it. That's the whole punchline. A silence stretches. Then 1,000 bees on the ceiling buzz in unison, just once like laughter. You see, he continues, everyone thought being a cloud-throwing patriarch was glamorous. It's not. Too many worshippers, too much thunder. So I split into something small, something buzzing, and I remembered what time felt like again. You shift in your seat. The glass floor beneath you lights up. One of the glyphs glows a spiral made of barley. You feel it hum against your heels. A fringe tidbit. Some Neolithic calendars, yes, pre-Greek, were based not on stars or moon phases, but on the growth patterns of grains and the life cycle of bees. Whole temples functioned like biodynamic clocks, ticking in pollen and fermented mead. Historians still argue whether my whole swarm phase actually happened, Zeus says, raising one eyebrow. Some say it's a metaphor for decentralization. Others say it was just a weird festival prank that got out of hand. He shrugs, but the swarm doesn't care. He raises his hand. The clocks on the wall stop. All of them. Water pauses. Shadows freeze. Incense halts mid-curl. You feel your own pulse hesitate for just a moment. Time halts. And in the stillness, Zeus says, you're not here to measure time. You're here to remember it. There's a difference. He snaps his fingers. The clocks restart. But now they're playing music. Not actual notes, just rhythm. Clicks and chimes and drips all aligning into a strange lullaby. The bees on the ceiling descend, forming a lazy spiral above your head. The glass floor softens beneath your feet, and the room begins to tilt, not dangerously, but like a cradle. Stay as long as you like, Zeus says, reclining. The world will still be confused when you wake up, and you close your eyes just for a moment. Because you're not sure whether you're dreaming this or whether the bees are dreaming you. Your eyes flutter open not because of noise, but because of silence. A deep, weighty hush that feels less like absence and more like presence, wearing soft slippers. You're still in the room of clocks, but Zeus is gone. The throne is empty, dripping its last golden bead of wax. The air feels thicker, denser, like you've descended into the deeper layers of dream mud. A trail of bees hangs midair in a spiral, pulsing with dim light like a DNA strand made of honey and mystery. They don't sting or buzz, they beckon. So of course you follow. The chamber tilts as you step forward, not just metaphorically. The whole room physically tilts on an unseen axis, shifting your weight sideways until the walls are the floor, and the floor becomes a skylight overhead. Not disorienting, surprisingly, more like being poured gently into a new orientation of reality. The bees lead you through a vertical tunnel lined in limestone blocks, etched with swirling labyrinths. The designs shimmer faintly, reacting to your breath. Each inhale reveals a layer of ancient text, and each exhale erases it again, as if the passage is reading you. Eventually, the tunnel opens into an enormous cave, a real one this time, no illusion. Massive, damp, alive. The smell of moss and wet stone settles into your clothes like an old perfume. Here torches flicker with firelight but don't emit heat. The cave pulses with a quiet heartbeat. At the center sits a massive stone altar shaped like a comb. Yes, like a honeycomb, but carved from obsidian. It glistens in the light, black and reflective, like a memory you're not ready to revisit. Atop the altar, a calendar, but not like any you've seen. No boxes, no numbered days. It's a wheel split into 13 segments, each one adorned with corn kernels, tiny carved skulls, and what might be cacao beans. Mayan, a mainstream historical fact. The ancient Maya tracked time using multiple overlapping calendar systems. The Zolkin, a 260-day ritual calendar, and the Hab, a 365-day solar calendar, often intertwined with the long count used to track vast epochs. These weren't just abstract systems, they governed everything: crop cycles, war, decisions, when to get a haircut, probably. Yes, you examine the calendar wheel, the walls of the cave begin to shimmer. Scenes appear holographic but ancient. Mayan astronomers crouch on rooftops marking Venus's movements with obsidian sticks. Priests crack open cacao pods in sync with lunar eclipses. Children play with tiny beeswax toys shaped like gods with insect wings. Then something stranger. You see a scene of a cave, this exact cave lit with floating glyphs and cornflecked light. A swarm of bees hovers in the shape of a seated figure, humanish, but also unmistakably divine. You realize you're watching a memory, or a projection, or perhaps time is folding into itself like hot tamale dough, and you're the filling. A fringe tidbit. In several Mayan myths, bees weren't just helpful insects, they were messengers of the gods, especially linked to Amuzangkab, the bee god. He wore a helmet shaped like a hive and governed not just honey but sacred intoxication and divine order. Some scholars believe he was originally part of a much older mythic archetype, the bee as oracle. The altar hums under your palm. It spins. Not quickly, just a lazy rotation, like a lazy Susan at a banquet of deities. Each segment clicks into place, and as it does, a new sound fills the air. A baby crying rain on banana leaves, the pop of corn roasting in a clay oven. Then voices chanting, low musical syllables in Yucatec forming a rhythm that pulls at your bones. The calendar keeps spinning, and the cave starts to respond. Stalactites drip in time. The water on the floor vibrates in concentric circles. Even the bees return, coalescing into the shape of a hand, pointing toward the far end of the chamber. You step closer. Another altar. This one's smaller, shaped like a maize cob split open, revealing obsidian kernels inside. And on top of it, resting like a museum artifact and a birthday cake, simultaneously is a crown. Not a golden sparkly thing, this one's made of dried corn silk, beeswax, and obsidian shards. And somehow, it's humming your name. You don't remember telling it your name. But okay, we're well past the point of questioning now. Historians still argue whether this site, you murmur almost unconsciously, was a real calendar cave or just a particularly decorative corn silo. The bees chuckle. Or maybe it's you. You reach toward the crown, your fingers brush it, and suddenly zip, you're back at the edge of the room. The altar is gone. The cave is darker, quieter, like it never existed. The crown still in your hand, but smaller now, just a ring of corn silk, delicate as a whisper. The spiral of bees hovers once more, waiting. And now you realize this journey isn't about where you're going. It's about what you notice on the way. You tuck the corn silk ring behind your ear. It smells like childhood and time and maybe popcorn. You follow the bees once more. They lead you into a tunnel so narrow you have to squeeze sideways. The walls are sticky with ancient sap. One bee lingers on your cheek before zipping ahead. You press onward deeper into the past, or maybe the future, or whatever sideways version of time you're walking through now. You emerge slowly, sticky, a bit disoriented from the syrup-glazed tunnel, and blink into a new chamber that opens like a blossoming flower. This one is domed and bathed in blue light, not from any torch or sunbeam, but from the walls themselves. They glow softly like the inside of a seashell at twilight. Your corn silk crown crackles gently behind your ear, like it too knows you're somewhere important. Floating in the center of the room is an orb, not mechanical, not magical, but strangely alive. Made of polished stone obsidian, again etched with layers of glyphs that twist and scroll on their own, like they're breathing. It's suspended by nothing, gently spinning, and you realize it's not just decoration. It's a timekeeper. This, you realize with a little shiver, is how the Maya saw time. Not as a line, not even a wheel, but a living, layered entity. The calendar wasn't just a record. It was a creature you could feed with rituals, tickle with offerings, and sometimes, if you weren't careful, wake up entirely. A mainstream historical fact. The Mayan calendar didn't predict the end of the world in 2012. That was a modern misinterpretation. What actually ended was a major cycle in the long count calendar called a Baktun, which spans 394 solar years. The 13th Baktun ended in December 2012, and the calendar simply reset like a cosmic odometer. But try telling that to people who stocked up on canned beans and toilet paper. Around the orb, several smaller stones circle like moons. Each one represents a count of time: the kin 1 day, the winal 20 days, the tun 360 days, the katun 200 days, and the baktun itself. You watch the stones orbit and suddenly understand why the calendar was often inscribed into circular wheels. The Maya weren't just being artsy. They were illustrating orbital motion, cosmic gears, planet-sized clocks ticking in sync with human affairs. One stone in particular slows as it spins, glowing brighter. It bears the mark of a jaguar, mouth open, fangs exposed, but not in aggression. It's yawning. You feel the deep pull of dream logic again. This is no ordinary cocoon. It's yours. You step closer and the jaguar glyph flickers. The room responds. Suddenly you're elsewhere again, but not just in space. This time you're standing in the center of a bustling Mayan city. Bright murals, red stucco buildings, and jungle parrots screeching above your head. You're no longer a visitor, you're part of the dream. A priest beside you is dressed head to sandal in shimmering jade with an elaborate headdress shaped like a bee. He holds a staff topped with obsidian, and when he points it toward the sky, the city quiets. Everyone looks up. A total solar eclipse is beginning. The sky darkens like someone's dimmed the planet's brightness setting, and no one panics. They kneel. Even the dogs sit. Why? Because the eclipse was foretold long ago, precisely by those spinning glyphs and orbs you just left behind. A quirky tidbit: Mayan astronomers could predict eclipses with astonishing accuracy using a mathematical system that included zero-A concept most civilizations didn't develop until much later. And they did it all without telescopes, using just sight shadows and stone. The air stills, the eclipse reaches totality, and just then the bees return. This time they don't swarm, they march. Along the ground, up the altar, around the ceremonial bowl placed there by the priest. The bowl is filled with cornmeal cacao and a dark syrup you really hope isn't blood. A single bee dips into the mixture, then rises hovering beside your ear. It hums not angrily, but like it's sharing a lullaby that only insects and time travelers can hear. Historians still argue whether these rituals you whisper entranced were intended to appease gods or to instruct time itself, or maybe both. The eclipse ends. The world returns. You're still standing in the city square, but the people have shifted now, wearing different clothes, sporting different haircuts. The murals have changed. A few more pyramids have sprouted like jungle mushrooms. Time has leapt ahead. Just a few cartoons, maybe. You look up. The moon is waxing. The priest is gone. The bees are silent. The orb reappears, gently rotating in the air before you, its smaller stones realigning, reshuffling like a deck of divine cards. And you're back in the blue-lit dome, feeling like someone who just flipped to the last page of a very weird but very important book. The corn silk ring behind your ear pulses. Not light, not heat, just presence. And the orb finally stops spinning. Time for the moment is at rest. You don't sit. You float because gravity here doesn't quite behave. Your toes hover inches above the floor and you're just there, not thinking, not moving, not worrying about to-do lists or emails or whether you remembered to defrost anything for dinner. Just you, a crown of dried corn, and a swarm of memory disguised as insects. Whatever comes next, you feel ready. Because honestly, once you've followed a swarm of divine bees through a cave system, survived an eclipse ritual, and stood before the heartbeat of the cosmos, not much else feels urgent. Even if your calendar says Monday, you feel it before you see it. A low vibration in your bones, like someone humming a lullaby into your skeleton. The orb, remember, the one with all the swirling glyphs, is still at rest, but the chamber around it is not. Walls that were once smooth begin to shimmer with motion, like puddles in a soft rain. Images rise from the stone farmers planting corn, bees swarming from a painted hive, scribes bent over folded codices, their brushes poised mid-stroke. It's not a movie. It's not quite a dream. It's more like a slideshow beamed directly into your bloodstream. You see a woman in a jade necklace crouched beside a maize field, her fingers brushing the soil. Next to her, a child holds a carved wooden toy that looks suspiciously like a bee with wings made from translucent agave leaves. The sun is high, the shadows short. This is the daily rhythm life calibrated by corn. A mainstream historical fact: the Maya had more than 15 different words for maize in various stages of growth. Their entire calendar was tightly interwoven with the planting, harvesting, and ritual honoring of this sacred crop. It wasn't just a food, it was time itself, walking on two legs. The image shifts. Now you're inside a workshop. Wooden shelves sag under the weight of beeswax candles, pots of honey-carved hives shaped like miniature temples. One man gently blows smoke into an open hive, humming softly. The bees don't sting, they know him. He's what modern scholars might call a meloponiculturist, a bee farmer. But to the Maya, he's something more. A keeper of sweetness, a tuner of celestial frequencies. Next to him, a codex lies open. Its page shows something strange, not just days or months or eclipses, but bees dancing in little spirals, glyphs echoing the waggle dances of real hives. Historians still argue whether these dances you whisper to yourself were recorded to decode cosmic messages or simply to track nectar flow. Either way, you're starting to wonder if bees have always known more than they let on. Another ripple of time, and you're in a darkened temple again, but this one's smaller, less ceremonial, more personal. A single fire crackles in the center, casting flickering shadows across four carved stelae. Each stone pillar is etched with both celestial alignments and bee trails. Yes, there it is again. Spiral zigzags, looping lines that eerily match how bees move when telling their hive where the good stuff is. You realize that someone centuries ago took the time to carve this language of sweetness into stone right next to the movements of Venus and Mars. It's a theory no one talks about enough that bees might have helped the Maya think in cycles, that watching bees could have been part of the reason they understood time as a spiral rather than a line. After all, bees always return to where they started only to loop back out again. Sound familiar? A quirky tidbit. Some Maya temples had walls coated with a thin layer of honey and beeswax, not just for scent or preservation, but possibly to invite real bees into the ritual space. Imagine attending a midnight solstice ceremony while dozens of sacred insects hum overhead, carrying your prayers into the jungle air. You lean closer to the stele. One glyph pulses faintly shaped like a bee, whose wings form the number 13, the sacred end of a Baktun. Beneath it, another glyph glows. This one looks like you. No, seriously. A figure with your posture, your face, your little corn crown, now dusty with travel. And they're holding something, a mirror. Not just any mirror, a polished obsidian one. You blink and you're holding it too. In its surface, you don't see yourself. You see all the places you've been. The flooded honey cavern, the jaguar sphinx hallway, the woman in the maize field, the bee priest and the eclipse, the glyph spinning orb. It's all there layered like sediment stacked like stone calendars. And then the mirror fogs over. A new image appears. It's your own room. Bed, blanket, a faint glow from your screen, a fan humming softly. You are being shown your return path. The chamber fades. The images dissolve like sugar in warm tea. The orb lowers gently until it touches the floor, then vanishes into it like a pebble sinking into mud. The corn silk crown slides off your head and floats into the air. It spins once, twice, and then dissolves into a soft cloud of bees that drift upward, trailing gold dust. They don't sting. They hum a little lullaby. You hum back without even meaning to. Then silence. You're standing at the tunnel entrance again, though you don't remember walking. The walls no longer ripple. The glyphs are quiet. But you carry something new, a different sense of what time is. It isn't racing forward. It isn't running out. It's circling, looping, spiraling gently like bees returning to the hive again and again and again. And so are you. Because somehow, without quite understanding how you are the swarm now, and you're exactly where you're meant to be. There's a tunnel in front of you, but it doesn't lead outward. Not exactly. It feels more like down and in, as if someone stitched a wormhole straight through the folds of your brain and lined it with feathers and pollen. You step into it, not with your feet, but with your thoughts, and the stone walls bloom into forest, into honeycomb, into memory. It's quiet here, calm, in a way that makes your eyelids droop and your breath slow automatically. You feel your own heartbeat align with something deeper. Maybe it's the earth. Maybe it's the hive. Hard to tell, really. You start to recognize patterns. There's the sound of water dripping on stone, spaced exactly like the long count calendar ticks off centuries. There's a warm breeze that somehow smells like roasted mace and wet moss. And then you notice the ceiling, it's painted with stars. Not like a sky, but like a codex. Each constellation marked in shimmering ochre and charcoal. Bees spiral through the shapes. Venus blinks once, twice, and your old friend the bee glyph hovers just over your left shoulder like it never left. The tunnel opens. You're not in a ruin anymore. You're in a courtyard. It's late evening. A family gathers around a smoky fire. Someone grinds corn on a metate. Someone else spoons honey into small clay bowls. And in the center, a small child twirls in circles, mimicking the waggle dance with giggles and flailing arms. No one's speaking English, but you understand them. Their movements, their rhythm, it's all timekeeping. Everything is being counted. The turns of the grindstone, the rotations of the dance, the drips of honey. This is what a calendar looks like if you stop thinking about numbers and start thinking about people. A mainstream historical fact here. The Maya calendar wasn't a single system, it was several interlocking ones. The Tzolk'in 260-day sacred, round the Hab 365-day solar calendar, and the long count all meshed together like gears in a cosmic watch. But unlike your digital clock or that planner app you never open, this was a living system. It had scent, it had ritual, it had bee stings and corn silk and eclipse shadows baked into its bones. And it had gaps, lots of them, which is where the fringe stuff creeps in. Some researchers believe that the caves where rituals were held, often deep dripping limestone places, full of echo and smoke, were themselves temporal devices, not metaphorically, literally. The acoustics, the mineral content, even the cave spider's egg cycles might have played a role in counting time. One fringe theory goes so far as to say that these caves were the reset switches for entire calendar epochs. Historians still argue whether the deepest chambers were simply ceremonial or whether some were used as what one rather poetic researcher once called memory engines, places you entered not just to mark time, but to reshape it. And that makes you think back to the bees again. Because bees don't use clocks. They use vibration, temperature, an angle of the sun, scent. They use feeling. And suddenly it clicks. Maybe the Maya didn't track time to control it. Maybe they tracked it to harmonize with it, to hum along rather than race ahead. You blink, the courtyard fades. You're hovering now, yes, hovering above a jungle. A great pyramid rises below you, its shadow stretching long in the dawn light. And carved into its side, just barely visible, is a massive glyph, a spiral made of bees. The steps leading up its flanks form the points of an invisible calendar, one only readable from this angle. The wind shifts. You hear chanting. You hear bees. You hear the earth breathing in seasons. And you descend. Feet touch stone. Hands find a familiar obsidian mirror. You hold it up expecting your reflection, but this time you see someone else. It's a young woman in a white robe. She's painting a new codex. You recognize the glyph's maze, Venus Bee Time. She glances up, not at you, but through you, and smiles the kind of smile people save for sacred moments. You realize you're in her memory, or maybe she's in yours. Hard to say. And then it ends. Not with a bang, with a thrum, like a hive quieting at dusk. You're in your bed now. You remember being in your bed the whole time even though you weren't. Your fingers twitch like wings. Your spine hums like a string pulled tight. And for just a moment, time doesn't feel like something you're trapped in. It feels like something that hums with you, that listens, that turns in spirals and never really ends, just like bees do. The stars outside your window blink slowly like the eyes of something ancient and kind. Your breathing matches their rhythm, syncing with something far beyond the tick of any clock. You feel softness underneath you, the bed, the pillow, the warm gravity of sleep pressing gently down. The story lingers in your chest, not in a busy analytical way, but in the soft buzz of remembered wings. You picture those ancient courtyards, those stone steps warmed by centuries of sun. You hear the bees one last time, not loud, not urgent, just present, just steady, just right. All around you the calendar turns. Not forward, not back. It curls like smoke. It loops like a spiral. Your thoughts begin to drift, not like leaves tossed by wind, but like canoes following a slow current. You let go of direction. You let go of time. You let go of trying to remember where the story started or where it might lead next. Because in this moment, none of that matters. What matters is rest. What matters is peace. What matters is the hum beneath the silence, the sound of everything being exactly where it needs to be, including you. Good night.